My name is Helena Maris, and right now, at 72 years old, I'm watching my son walk away from me with a smile that could freeze hell itself. The sun is just starting to crack through the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the kind of morning that should feel peaceful. But all I can hear are his words, still hanging in the air like smoke from a fire that won't go out. "You're going to die penniless, Mom. Might as well get used to it." He said it so casually, like he was commenting on the weather, like he was telling me what he wanted for breakfast. Then he turned on his heel, hands in his pockets, and walked back into my house, the house I built with my own 2 hands alongside my late husband, Calvin. My house. Except it isn't mine anymore, is it? I stand here on this porch, gripping the wooden railing so hard my knuckles have gone white. My heart is pounding in my chest, but I'm not crying. Not yet. There's something else building inside me, something cold and sharp and quiet. Because Evan doesn't know what I opened yesterday. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. He has no idea what's sitting in the envelope on my kitchen table, hidden under a stack of old recipe cards where he'd never think to look. And when he finds out, that smug smile is going to melt right off his face. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you how I got here. How a mother who gave everything ends up standing on her own porch, being told by her own flesh and blood that she'll die with nothing. This didn't start yesterday, or last week, or even last year. This started 10 years ago, when Calvin died and left me alone in this world. When I thought the hardest part of my life was behind me. I was wrong. Calvin was my compass. The man worked harder than anyone I've ever known, putting in long hours at our little hardware store in Maple Creek. That's our town, small, tucked between hills and golden plains where everybody knows everybody's business. We weren't rich, but we were honest. We saved every penny we could, planning for a simple retirement where we'd sit on this very porch and watch the sunsets together. Then cancer took him. Slow and cruel, the way cancer does. And suddenly I was alone with 2 grown children and a business I was too tired to run by myself. That's when Evan stepped in. My son, my firstborn, with his easy charm and his promises. "Don't worry, Mom," he'd say, putting his arm around my shoulders. "I'll take care of you." That's what family does. I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. Our other child, Lydia, had married young and moved to the city. She called on holidays, sent cards on my birthday, but she had her own life. I didn't blame her. Evan was the one who stayed. Evan was the one who seemed to care. When I told him I couldn't manage the hardware store anymore, he had the perfect solution. "Let's sell it, Mom. You've worked hard enough. It's time to rest. We'll reinvest the money. Make sure you're comfortable. Let me handle the business side. You just focus on enjoying your life." It made sense. I was exhausted, grieving, overwhelmed. The store had been Calvin's dream as much as mine, and running it without him felt like wearing shoes that didn't fit anymore. So I sold it. Our life's work, the place where Calvin and I had spent 30 years serving our community, gone in a signature. $250,000. It should have set me up for the rest of my life. The papers went into Evan's name. "Just easier this way, Mom," he explained. "For tax purposes. Trust me. You don't ask your own child to prove his love with legal documents. You just trust. Because that's what mothers do. That's what fools do. Would you trust your own child with everything you owned? Comment below, because what happens next will change everything Helena thought she knew about family. Within 6 months of selling the store, Evan and his wife Tara moved into my house. Just to help out, they said. "You're getting older, Mom. What if you fall? What if something happens? We should be close by." It seemed like kindness at first. The house was big enough, and honestly, the company felt good after so many quiet nights alone. I thought maybe this was what family was supposed to look like, generations under one roof, taking care of each other. I didn't realize I was watching my prison being built one brick at a time. The changes started small. So small, I almost didn't notice them. Evan began collecting my mail from the mailbox. Don't worry about it, Mom. I'll sort through the junk for you. Then he suggested combining our bank accounts. For convenience. So, I can help with your bills. Then he took over my medications, my insurance paperwork, even my grocery shopping. You rest, Mom, he'd say with that smile. Let me handle the adult stuff. The adult stuff. As if I hadn't been handling adult stuff since before he was born. As if I hadn't raised him and his sister on a shoestring budget while Calvin and I built that store from nothing. But I went along with it because I wanted to believe in his goodness. I wanted to believe that my son, the baby boy I'd rocked to sleep and nursed through fevers, was doing this out of love. The first crack in that belief came at the grocery store. I was buying milk and bread, standing at the register with people lined up behind me. The cashier swiped my debit card once. Twice. 3 times. I'm sorry, ma'am. This card isn't working. My face burned hot with embarrassment. I could feel the eyes of everyone behind me, judging, wondering why this old woman couldn't even buy groceries. I mumbled an apology and left the cart right there, walking out to my car with shaking hands. I called Evan from the parking lot. He laughed it off so easily. Oh, that? Yeah, must be a bank error. They've been having computer problems all week. I'll sort it out, Mom. Don't worry about it. But it happened again the next week. And the week after that. Each time, Evan had an excuse. The bank was updating their system. There was a hold on the account for security reasons. Mercury was in retrograde, for all I knew. He always had an answer, and I always wanted to believe him. I started paying for things with the little bit of cash I kept hidden in my purse. $20 here, $10 there. I felt like a teenager sneaking money from her parents instead of a grown woman who'd worked her whole life. Then came the morning with the pearls. I walked into the kitchen and there was Tara standing at the counter, drinking coffee. But it wasn't the coffee that stopped me cold. It was what she was wearing around her neck. My pearl necklace. The one Calvin gave me for our 25th wedding anniversary. The one I kept in my jewelry box upstairs in my bedroom, the room that was supposed to be private, supposed to be mine. She was fingering those pearls like they belonged to her. Like they'd always belonged to her. Oh, she said when she noticed me staring. Not embarrassed. Not apologetic. Just casual, like we were discussing the weather. Evan said you wouldn't mind. They're vintage, but they go really well with my new dress. I'm wearing them to the charity luncheon today. I opened my mouth to say something, but the words got stuck in my throat. I just stood there, frozen, watching her touch what belonged to me. What belonged to Calvin's memory. They really are beautiful, she continued, turning to check a reflection in the window. You have such good taste, Helena. Or, well, you had good taste. Back in the day. That little jab. That tiny knife slipped between my ribs so smoothly, I almost didn't feel it at first. She smiled, patted my shoulder like I was a child, and walked past me. The pearls clicked softly against her collarbone. I could smell her perfume, expensive, the kind I could never afford even when Calvin and I were doing well. I stood in that kitchen for a long time after she left. Just stood there, staring at nothing, feeling something hard and cold forming in my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Evan and Tara laughing in what used to be the guest room. Their voices carried through the walls, young, carefree, completely unburdened by guilt or shame. I remembered something Calvin used to say when someone at the store tried to cheat us or take advantage. Some contractor wanting to overcharge, some supplier trying to slip in faulty merchandise. Quiet justice, Lena, he'd whisper to me later, when we were alone. Quiet justice doesn't need shouting. It needs patience. You wait. You watch. And when the time is right, you act. I pulled the covers up to my chin and whispered those words back to the darkness. Quiet justice. Patience. I didn't know it then, but those words were about to become my survival guide. My mantra. The only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. Because what I didn't know yet, what I couldn't have known, was that the pearls were just the beginning. Have you ever had someone take something precious from you and act like it was nothing? Drop a speak or silent justice in the comments, because Helena's about to learn just how much has been taken. I started paying closer attention after the pearl incident. Little things I'd been ignoring suddenly came into sharp focus, like adjusting a camera lens until the picture goes from blurry to crystal clear. And what I saw made my blood run cold. My mail wasn't just being sorted, it was being opened. Letters from the bank, from my insurance company, from Social Security. All opened, read, and filed away before I ever saw them. When I asked Evan about it, he waved his hand dismissively. Just handling your affairs, Mom. That's what we agreed on, remember? Except I didn't remember agreeing to that. I didn't remember agreeing to any of this. One afternoon, while Evan and Tara were out, I went looking for my documents. My birth certificate, my marriage license, the deed to the house. All the important papers Calvin and I had kept in a fireproof box in the bedroom closet. The box was gone. I tore through that closet like a woman possessed. Pulled out every shoebox, every storage bin, every piece of forgotten junk we'd accumulated over 40 years of marriage. Nothing. My hands were shaking when I finally gave up. I sat on the bedroom floor, surrounded by the wreckage of my search, and felt panic rising in my throat like bile. Where were my papers? Where was my proof that any of this belonged to me? That evening, I asked Evan about it. Try to keep my voice calm, casual. Honey, have you seen that fireproof box? The one with our important documents. He barely looked up from his phone. Oh yeah. I moved all that to my office. Consolidated everything for safekeeping. You know, in case of fire or flood or whatever. Can I see them?
Now he looked at me.
Really looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Something cold flickered behind his eyes.
Why?
You don't trust me, Mom. The way he said it made me feel small. Made me feel like I was being unreasonable, paranoid, ungrateful. No, of course I trust you. I just wanted to. Then don't worry about it, he interrupted. Everything's handled. You should be happy you don't have to deal with all that boring paperwork anymore. He went back to his phone, and the conversation was over. That night, I waited until the house was quiet, until I could hear Evan snoring through the walls. Then I crept downstairs to his office, the room that used to be Calvin's workshop, the place where he'd fix broken tools and build birdhouses on Saturday afternoons. The door was locked. I stood there in the darkness, my hand on the doorknob, feeling something inside me crack just a little bit more. 2 weeks later, I found a bank statement. Not one of mine. I hadn't seen one of those in months. This one had been left on the kitchen counter, probably by accident. It had Evan's name on it, but the account number looked familiar. I picked it up with trembling fingers and read through the transactions. My heart started pounding harder with each line. Charges at expensive restaurants. A payment to a luxury car dealership. $5,000 withdrawn in cash. Another $3,000 the week before that. And the account balance, the number that made my knees go weak, was a shadow of what it should have been. What it had been 6 months ago when I'd last checked. Where was my $250,000? Where were my savings? I was still staring at that statement when Evan walked in. I didn't even hear him coming. Suddenly, he was just there, snatching the paper out of my hands. That's private, Mom. That's my money, I said. My voice came out weak, barely a whisper. He laughed. Actually laughed. Your money? Mom, we talked about this. Everything's merged now. Joint accounts, remember? For convenience. I don't remember agreeing to joint accounts. Well, you did. He folded the statement and tucked it into his pocket. Look, you're getting older. Your memory isn't what it used to be. That's why I'm handling all this stuff. To protect you. Protect me from what? From yourself, he said simply. Then he smiled, patted my cheek like I was 5 years old, and walked away. I stood in that kitchen, feeling the walls close in around me, feeling my whole life being compressed into something small and powerless. That night, I went through my wallet, checked every pocket, every hidden compartment. I found $37 in cash and a single credit card I'd forgotten about, one I'd opened years ago for emergencies and never used. $37. That's what I had to my name. Everything else, every penny Calvin and I had scraped together, every dollar we'd saved from 40 years of hard work, was gone. Or might as well be gone, controlled by someone else's hands. I tried the credit card the next day just to see. Declined. When I called the company, they told me the account had been closed.
But I didn't close it, I said.
According to our records, your son called and explained that you have dementia and were making unauthorized charges. He's listed as your power of attorney, so he had the authority to close the account for your protection. Power of attorney, dementia, unauthorized charges. I hung up the phone and sat very still. That's when I understood. Really understood. This wasn't just control. This wasn't just convenience or helping out his aging mother. This was theft. Calculated, methodical, legal theft. And the worst part? I'd helped him do it. I'd signed the papers, merged the accounts, handed over my trust like it was nothing, because I thought that's what family did. The next morning, Evan came into the kitchen swirling a glass of whiskey, even though it was barely 9 o'clock. He leaned against the counter and watched me with those cold eyes. You know, Mom, he said casually, you're getting to that age where maybe you shouldn't be managing your own affairs anymore. It's natural. It happens to everyone eventually. I'm 72, Evan. Not 90. My mind is fine. Is it? He took a sip of his whiskey. Because from where I'm standing, you seem pretty confused lately. Forgetting conversations. Losing things. It's concerning.
He was gaslighting me.
The term came to me from some article I'd read years ago. Making someone doubt their own reality, their own sanity. I know what you're doing, I whispered. He smiled. That same easy, charming smile that had fooled me for so long. I'm taking care of you, Mom. That's what I'm doing. You should be grateful. Would you confront your child if you discovered this? Or would fear keep you silent? Comment, confront, or silent, because what Helena finds next will make that choice impossible. The remarks started small. Little comments Tara would drop like poison in coffee, bitter but easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. You're moving pretty slow today, Helena. Maybe you should rest more. Did you forget to brush your hair this morning? You look a little rough. I hope you're not coming down with something. At your age, you really can't be too careful. At your age. She said that phrase like it was an insult, like being 72 was something to be ashamed of, some kind of moral failing. But I bit my tongue, kept quiet, because where else could I go? What else could I do? This was my house, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like I was a guest in my own life, tolerated but not wanted. Then Evan started asking me to contribute to household expenses. The first time, I thought I'd misheard him. Contribute.
Yeah, Mom.
For bills. Electricity, water, groceries. We're all living here together, so it's only fair everyone chips in. I stared at him. Evan, this is my house. Calvin and I paid off the mortgage 20 years ago. Right, but there are still bills. And food isn't free. Neither is keeping this place running. He said it so reasonably, like it made perfect sense. I'm not asking for much. Just a few hundred a month. A few hundred a month. From the $37 I had hidden in my wallet. I don't have that kind of money anymore, I said quietly. He raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? You've got your Social Security, don't you? My Social Security. The checks that went straight into the account he controlled. The account I couldn't access anymore. Evan. Look, Mom, if you can't contribute, maybe we need to have a different conversation. About your living situation. Those words hung in the air like a threat. I started spending more time in my room. It felt safer there, away from their eyes and their comments and their slow, steady dismantling of my dignity. But even my room wasn't safe. One afternoon, I came back from a short walk, my last bit of freedom, those walks around the block, and found Tara going through my dresser drawers. "What are you doing?" She didn't even flinch. Just kept rifling through my things like she had every right. "Looking for that brooch you mentioned. The one with the sapphires. I thought it would look nice with my navy dress." "That was my mother's," I said, my voice shaking. "It's not for borrowing." She turned and looked at me with such contempt it felt like a slap. "You know what your problem is, Helena? You're selfish. You have all these beautiful things just sitting in drawers, collecting dust, and you won't share them with family. It's sad, really. Selfish." She called me selfish for not wanting to give away my dead mother's jewelry. I wanted to scream, wanted to grab her by the shoulders and throw her out of my room, out of my house, out of my life. But I was tired. So tired. And she was young and strong, and I was just an old woman with nowhere to go. She found the brooch, held it up to the light, and smiled. "This'll do nicely." Then she walked out, and I sat on my bed and cried for the first time since Calvin's funeral. That night I heard them talking. Their voices carried through the heating vents. Old houses like this one. You can hear everything if you know where to listen. "She's useless now," Tara said. "All she does is take up space. We could rent out her room, make some actual money instead of supporting dead weight." Dead weight. That's what I'd become to them. "Give it time," Evan replied. His voice was calm, calculated. "We need to be smart about this. Can't just throw her out. There are laws." "So, what's the plan?" "Care home. Once we get her declared incompetent, we can move her into one of those state facilities. Then we'll have the whole house to ourselves." I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. My whole body was shaking. They were planning to throw me away, to lock me up in some facility and take everything I had left. The next morning, I found an official-looking envelope on my dresser. Not in the mail, not handed to me, just placed there while I was sleeping, like a threat left on a pillow. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was an eviction notice, filed by Evan Maris against Helena Maris. 30 days to vacate the premises. My own son was evicting me from my own house. I read it 3 times, trying to make the words make sense. But they didn't. They couldn't. This was impossible. This was my house. Mine and Calvin's. Except according to every legal document, according to every paper I'd signed, it wasn't mine anymore. It was Evan's. I walked downstairs in a daze. Found Evan sitting at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper and drinking coffee like this was just another normal morning. "Evan," I said, my voice barely working. "What is this?" He glanced at the paper in my hand. Didn't even have the decency to look guilty.
"Oh, that."
"Yeah, Mom. We need to talk about your living situation." "My living situation? This is my home. Your father built this house with his own hands." "Actually," he said, setting down his coffee, "I own this house now. Remember? You signed it over to me. For tax purposes. I never agreed to be evicted. You're not being evicted. You're being relocated." He stood up, walked over to me. Up close, I could see how cold his eyes were. How empty. "There's a care facility about 20 miles from here. State-run. Perfectly adequate. You'll have a room, 3 meals a day, activities. It'll be good for you." "I don't need a care facility. I'm not." "Mom," he interrupted, his voice sharp now. "Let's be real. You can't take care of yourself anymore. You can't manage money. You forget things. You're becoming a liability." A liability. His own mother, and he called me a liability. "Besides," he continued, his voice softening into something that might have sounded like concern if you didn't know better, "it's time. You can't live here forever." I felt my legs go weak. "Please, Evan. Please don't do this."
He just looked at me.
Then he leaned in close, so close I could smell the coffee on his breath, and said the words that broke something fundamental inside me. "You're going to die penniless, Mom. Might as well get used to it." Then he walked away, whistling. Actually whistling. From the hallway, I heard Tara laugh. If your own child said those words to you, could you ever forgive them? Drop a broken heart emoji if this hits too close to home, because Helena's story is about to take a turn nobody saw coming. That night, I didn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. I sat in Calvin's old chair by the window, the one he used to read the paper in every Sunday morning, and I stared at our wedding photo on the mantel. We looked so young in that picture, so full of hope and dreams, and the kind of naive faith that makes you believe good things happen to good people. I wanted to talk to him, wanted to ask him what to do. But Calvin was gone, and I was alone with a son who wanted me dead or locked away, and a daughter-in-law who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to her comfort. "Quiet justice," I whispered to the empty room. "You always said it's the best kind, Calvin. But how? How do I fight this when they've taken everything?" The house creaked around me, old bones settling just like mine. I thought about the care facility Evan mentioned. I'd heard stories about those places, the state-run ones where they put people nobody wants anymore. Shared rooms with strangers. Medication that turns you into a zombie. Dying slowly, while the world forgets you exist. That's what my son wanted for me. That's what his love had become. I must have dozed off at some point because I woke to the sunrise bleeding through the window, painting the fields outside in shades of gold and amber. The same view Calvin and I had loved for 40 years. And that's when I remembered something. Something Calvin had said during those last foggy months when the cancer was winning. "Always keep a backup plan, Lena," he'd whispered from his hospital bed. "Even the strongest house needs a hidden pillar. Promise me you'll remember that." I'd promised, but I hadn't understood. The morphine made him say strange things toward the end, and I'd thought this was just another rambling from a dying man. But what if it wasn't? Calvin had been meticulous about planning, about making sure we were protected. What if he'd known? What if he'd seen something in Evan that I'd been too blind to see? My heart started beating faster. There was someone who would know. Someone Calvin trusted with all our important matters. Mr. Radley. Our lawyer. I hadn't spoken to him since Calvin's funeral. But if there was a backup plan, if there was something Calvin had put in place, Mr. Radley would be the one who knew about it. The problem was the phone. Evan had taken control of the house phone, and my cell phone, well, that had mysteriously stopped working months ago. Evan said it was too expensive to keep two phone plans running. I'd have to find a way to call from somewhere else. Somewhere they wouldn't overhear. That afternoon, I told Tara I was going for my walk. She barely looked up from her magazine. "Don't be gone too long. You know how you get confused." I didn't bother responding. Just pulled on my cardigan and headed out. There was a pay phone outside the old post office, one of the last ones left in Maple Creek. I'd seen it a dozen times on my walks, but never thought I'd actually need to use it. My fingers shook as I fed quarters into the slot and dialed the number I'd memorized 40 years ago. It rang 4 times, and I was about to hang up when Radley and Associates. "Mr. Radley, please. This is Helena Maris." There was a pause. Then, "Mrs. Maris? Is everything all right?" Just hearing his kind voice made something in my chest loosen. "I need to see you. As soon as possible. Can we meet somewhere? Not at your office. Somewhere private." Another pause. Longer this time. "Mrs. Maris, are you in some kind of trouble?" "I think I might be. But I can't explain over the phone. Please." "There's a coffee shop on Maple and 5th. The Bluebird. Can you meet me there in an hour?"
"Yes."
"Thank you." I hung up and stood there for a moment, my heart pounding. This felt dangerous somehow, like I was sneaking around behind enemy lines, which I realized I was. An hour later, I was sitting across from Mr. Radley in a corner booth of the Bluebird, my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee I couldn't drink because my stomach was in knots. He was older than I remembered. His hair had gone completely white, and there were deep lines around his eyes. But those eyes were still sharp, still kind. Tell me what's happening, Helena.
So I did.
All of it. The money, the house, the control, the eviction notice. By the time I finished, his face had gone hard. That son of a bitch, he muttered. Then, quickly, pardon my language. It's okay. I've thought worse. He pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. First thing Monday morning, we're going to… Wait, I interrupted. Before we do anything, I need to ask you something. Did he ever set up any kind of emergency fund? Or trust? He said something about a backup plan before he died. Mr. Radley set down his pen, looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. He did. Those two words hung in the air between us. There's a trust fund. Not much, about $50,000. Calvin set it up specifically for emergencies. He made you the sole beneficiary, and he gave very specific instructions that it was only to be accessed under certain conditions. $50,000. It wasn't the fortune I'd lost, but it was something. It was hope. Why didn't you tell me about this before? Because Calvin asked me not to, unless you specifically came asking about it. He said. Mr. Radley paused, choosing his words carefully. He said if you ever needed it, you'd know to look for it, that you'd remember what he told you. The hidden pillar. Calvin's last gift to me. There's something else, Mr. Radley continued. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out an envelope. Cream-colored, slightly yellowed with age. My name was written on it in Calvin's shaky handwriting. He left this for you. Said to give it to you if you ever came asking about the backup plan. I took the envelope with trembling hands. Just holding it, knowing Calvin had touched it, had written my name with his own dying hands, it was almost too much. Can I read it now? Of course. I opened it carefully, like it might crumble to dust. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once. And as I read Calvin's words, written from beyond the grave, I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been broken start to reform into something harder, something stronger, something dangerous. What do you think Calvin's letter says? Drop your guess in the comments, because what Helena reads next will change everything. Calvin's handwriting was shaky, the letters uneven from hands that no longer obeyed his mind. But his words cut through time like a knife through butter. My dearest Lena, if you're reading this, it means life has tested you again. And knowing you, you've handled it with more grace than anyone deserves. But grace only gets you so far when people mistake your kindness for weakness. Don't let anyone steal your peace. Remember what we built together. And remember this, justice is best served in silence. There's more to this trust than meets the eye. Go to Radley's office. Let him explain everything. I loved you from the moment I saw you, and I'll love you long after I'm gone. Stay strong. Stay smart. And don't let the bastards win. Your Calvin. I read it twice. Then a third time. My eyes were blurring with tears, but I forced them back. Not here.
Not now.
Mr. Radley was watching me carefully. Are you all right, Helena? You said there's more to the trust. What did he mean? He pulled out a folder, thick with documents. Calvin was smarter than most people gave him credit for. He knew that hardware store inside and out, but he also understood property and investments. I don't understand. 10 years ago, Calvin purchased shares in a land investment trust. Small plots of undeveloped property around Maple Creek. At the time, they weren't worth much.
Farmland mostly.
Some of it right behind your house, actually. My heart started pounding. And now?
Now.
Mr. Radley smiled. Not a happy smile, but something close to satisfaction. The county approved a new development plan 6 months ago. Residential and commercial zoning. That farmland is now prime real estate. He pulled out an appraisal document and slid it across the table. I looked at the number at the bottom of the page and felt the world tilt sideways. $2,300,000. That can't be right, I whispered. It's right. And it's all yours, Helena. Calvin made sure of it. The shares are in your name only. Evan can't touch them. Even if he has power of attorney, even if he owns the house, he can't touch this because he doesn't even know it exists. I stared at that number until the digits started swimming. $2 million. Hidden away like a secret weapon, waiting for the day I'd need it. Calvin had known. Somehow, he'd known that I might need protection from our own son. There's one more thing, Mr. Radley said. He pulled out another envelope, this one sealed with red wax. Calvin left specific instructions about this property. He said, and I'm quoting here, "If Evan ever hurts her, if he ever takes what isn't his, make sure Lena knows she has the power to make things right." The power to make things right. I looked up at Mr. Radley, and for the first time in months, I felt something besides fear and sadness. I felt dangerous. What are my options? He leaned forward. You could sell the shares. Take the money and start over somewhere else. Get yourself a nice apartment. Live comfortably for the rest of your life. Or, he said slowly, you could donate them. The local orphanage has been looking for funding to expand. They need land. And if you were to gift them this property, you'd receive certain tax benefits. Plus, they've offered lifetime accommodation and a pension to benefactors who help them reach their goals. An orphanage. The same one Calvin used to volunteer at on Saturday mornings, building playground equipment and fixing broken swings. The same one where he taught Evan to hammer nails straight and measure twice before cutting. Back when we thought Evan would grow up to be a good man. If I did that, I said carefully, if I donated the land to them, what would happen to Evan? He'd lose his inheritance. The big one he's been planning for. The land behind your house that he probably assumes will be his someday?
Gone.
And since it would be a public donation, everyone in Maple Creek would know about it. Everyone in Maple Creek. In a small town where reputation was everything. How long would it take to arrange?
A week.
Maybe 2 if we want to make sure everything's ironclad. I thought about Evan's smile that morning. Thought about his words. You're going to die penniless. Then I thought about Calvin's letter. Don't let the bastards win. Let's do it, I said. All of it. The donation, the accommodation, everything. Mr. Radley smiled for real this time. I was hoping you'd say that. Would you forgive someone who tried to take everything, or would you make them pay? Comment forgive or justice, because Helen is about to make a choice that will shake this town to its core. For the next 2 weeks, I became an actress. The best performance of my life, playing the role of a confused, defeated old woman who'd accepted her fate. I shuffled when I walked. Let my sentences trail off. Pretended to forget things, names, dates, where I put my glasses. Evan and Tara ate it up. See, Tara said one morning, loud enough for me to hear. She's getting worse. Good thing we're moving her out soon. I nodded along, agreeing with whatever they said. Yes, maybe a care home would be nice. Yes, I understand I can't stay here forever. Yes, I'll be ready to go when the time comes. But at night, when they were asleep, I was on the phone with Mr. Radley, signing documents, making arrangements, building my quiet revolution brick by brick. The hardest part was keeping my face neutral when Evan started talking about his plans for the house. We're thinking of renovating, he said one evening, sprawled on Calvin's favorite chair like he owned it. Which legally he did. Knock down some walls. Open up the kitchen. Maybe add a pool out back.
A pool.
On the land where Calvin used to plant tomatoes. That sounds lovely, I said, my voice weak and tired. Tara was looking at paint samples. I'm thinking gray. Everything gray and white.
Very modern.
Get rid of all this old people stuff. Old people stuff. She meant Calvin's woodwork.
The shelves he'd built by hand.
The dining table where we'd eaten dinner every night for 40 years. Whatever you think is best, I said. She shot me a look of pure contempt. At least you're finally being reasonable. I went to my room and wrote everything down. Every cruel word, every dismissive look, every time they talked about my life like I was already dead. Then I waited. On Tuesday afternoon, Mr. Radley called. Everything's ready. The donation is finalized. The orphanage board wants to meet you tomorrow to present you with the accommodation agreement. They're calling the local paper. The paper? Helena, this is the biggest donation Maple Creek Orphanage has received in 20 years. They're going to make a big deal out of it. Is that okay? I thought about Evan reading the news over his morning coffee. Thought about the look on his face when he realized what I'd done. That's more than okay, I said. The next morning, I told Tara I was going for a walk. She barely looked up from her phone. Don't fall and break a hip. We don't have time for that right now. I put on my best dress, the blue one Calvin always said brought out my eyes. Did my hair. Put on lipstick for the first time in months. Then I walked out of that house like I was walking into battle. The orphanage was on the east side of town, a sprawling building that had seen better days. But the kids playing in the yard looked happy, and the director, Mrs. Chun, greeted me with tears in her eyes. Mrs. Maris, you don't know what this means to us. With this land, we can build a new wing. Accommodate twice as many children. It's a miracle. It's what my husband would have wanted, I said. And it was true. The ceremony was simple. They presented me with a plaque and a key to my new cottage on the property. Small but beautiful, with a view of the fields Calvin had loved. Then the photographer from the Maple Creek Gazette showed up, and suddenly it was real.
Permanent.
No taking it back. Mrs. Maris, can you tell us why you decided to make such a generous donation? I looked directly into the camera and thought about every word Calvin had written in that letter. Because family is supposed to protect each other, I said clearly. And when they don't, you have to protect yourself. My late husband taught me that the best kind of justice doesn't make noise. It just makes things right. The reporter scribbled notes. That's beautiful. And this property, it was part of your husband's estate. It was his final gift to me. He always said to keep a backup plan. I'm just sorry it took me so long to use it. Mrs. Chin squeezed my hand. The photographer took a dozen pictures, and I smiled for every single one. That night, I didn't go back to the house. I stayed in my new cottage, surrounded by boxes of the few possessions I'd managed to sneak out over the past week. My wedding photo, Calvin's favorite coffee mug, the pearls. I'd taken them back from Tara's jewelry box when she wasn't looking. I sat by the window and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Tomorrow, Evan would wake up to the headline. Tomorrow, the whole town would know. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, for the first time in a year, I slept peacefully. Have you ever waited for the perfect moment to reveal the truth? Drop a crown if you're Team Helena, because tomorrow, karma comes to Maple Creek. The Maple Creek Gazette hits doorsteps at 6 in the morning. I know this because I was awake at 5:30, sitting by my cottage window with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise. Waiting. At 6:15, my old phone, the one I'd kept hidden and charged at Mr. Radley's office, started ringing. I didn't answer. Just watched Evan's name flash on the screen again and again. By 7, he'd called 12 times. At 7:30, there was pounding on my cottage door. I looked through the peephole and saw him there, red-faced and furious, still in his pajamas, holding a crumpled newspaper in his fist.
Mom.
Open this door. I know you're in there. I sat down in Calvin's old chair and took another sip of coffee. The pounding continued. This is insane. You can't do this. That land was supposed to be mine. Mrs. Chin appeared from the main building. I could see her through the window, walking toward Evan with 2 security guards. Sir, you need to leave the property. That's my mother in there.
She's not well.
She doesn't know what she's doing. Mrs. Maris is a resident here now, and she's asked not to be disturbed. If you don't leave, we'll call the police. I watched Evan's face cycle through emotions, rage, disbelief, desperation. Then he saw me through the window. Our eyes met. "How could you?" he screamed. "After everything I've done for you." Everything he'd done. The theft. The cruelty. The systematic destruction of my dignity. I raised my coffee mug in a small salute and turned away. The security guards escorted him off the property. I could hear him shouting all the way to the parking lot. My phone rang again. This time it was Lydia, my daughter. I answered.
Mom?
"Mom, what's going on? Evan just called me screaming about some donation, and you moving out and—" "Hello, sweetheart." There was a pause. "Mom, you sound different." "I feel different. Evan says you donated Dad's land to an orphanage. Is that true?" "It is." "But that was worth, Mom. That was worth millions." "Why would you?" "Because it's what your father wanted. And because your brother tried to take everything from me. So I made sure he got exactly what he deserved." Nothing. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "What did he do?" So I told her. All of it. The stolen money, the manipulation, the eviction notice, the cruelty. By the time I finished, Lydia was crying. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have been there. I should have checked on you more. I just thought." "You thought your brother was taking care of me. So did I. What can I do? How can I help? You can live your life, honey. Be happy. That's all I ever wanted for either of you." We talked for another hour. Really talked, for the first time in years. When we hung up, she promised to visit soon. Without Evan. By noon, my phone was ringing off the hook. Friends I hadn't heard from in years, calling to congratulate me. Neighbors who'd watched me deteriorate over the past months, saying they'd suspected something was wrong. The Methodist Church called to thank me. The mayor's office sent flowers. The orphanage kids made me a card with dozens of handprints in rainbow colors. But the best call came at 2 in the afternoon. From Mr. Radley. "Helena, you might want to sit down for this." I'm already sitting. Evan showed up at my office an hour ago. Demanded I reverse the donation. Said you weren't mentally competent to make that decision. My stomach clenched. Can he do that? He tried. Threatened to sue, challenged your capacity, the whole 9 yards. So I showed him the documentation. The psychiatric evaluation we had done last week showing you're perfectly sound. The recordings you made of him and Tara discussing their plans. The paper trail of the money he stole. And I told him if he pursues this, I'll file criminal charges on your behalf. Elder abuse. Financial exploitation.
Fraud.
He could do prison time, Helena. I closed my eyes. Felt something that might have been satisfaction, or might have been sadness. Probably both. What did he say?
He left.
But not before promising he'd make you regret this. Let him try, I said. And I meant it. That evening, I walked through the orphanage grounds. Kids were playing soccer in the field, laughing, chasing each other, living lives free from cruelty and betrayal. This was what Calvin had wanted. Not revenge, exactly. Just justice. Quiet justice that helped people instead of hurting them. One of the kids, a little girl about 7, ran up to me. "Are you the nice lady who gave us the new playground?" "I suppose I am." She threw her arms around my waist. "Thank you. Nobody's ever been this nice to us before." I hugged her back and felt tears sting my eyes. Good tears this time. "You're welcome, sweetheart." As the sun set, I sat on my cottage porch and thought about Evan, about the son I'd raised and loved and lost somewhere along the way. Part of me still hurt for him. Still wanted to fix whatever had broken inside him that turned him into the kind of man who could look his mother in the eye and promise her misery. But a bigger part of me knew the truth. Some people can't be fixed. Some people choose cruelty. And the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for them is to let them face the consequences. Tomorrow, the land transfer would be final. Tomorrow, Evan would wake up in my old house, the one he'd stolen, and realize he'd won the battle but lost the war. And I would wake up in my cottage, surrounded by the laughter of children, with $2 million less, but infinitely richer than I'd been in years. Would you still feel guilty for protecting yourself, or would you celebrate your victory? Comment guilty or victory, because what happens next will test even the strongest hearts. 3 weeks passed in a strange kind of peace. I decorated my cottage with photos and small treasures I'd managed to save. Made friends with Mrs. Chun and some of the other staff. Watched the orphanage kids play and felt something in my chest slowly uncurl. But I knew it wasn't over. Men like Evan don't give up that easily. The call came on a Thursday morning. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mom. Evan's voice. Different now.
Smaller.
Missing the swagger and confidence that used to drip from every word. What do you want, Evan?
He stopped.
Cleared his throat.
Can we talk? Please.
I need to talk to you. Every instinct screamed at me to hang up. To protect myself from whatever manipulation he was planning next. But I'd spent 50 years being his mother. That doesn't just disappear because someone hurts you. You have 5 minutes. Not on the phone.
Can we meet? Just for coffee.
I'll come to you.
No.
The Bluebird. 1 hour. And if you bring Tara, I'm leaving. It'll just be me. I promise. I called Mr. Radley first. Told him where I'd be and when. He offered to come with me, but I said no. Some battles you have to face alone. Evan was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups of coffee. He looked terrible. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair uncombed, dark circles under his eyes like bruises.
He stood when he saw me. Mom.
Thank you for coming. I slid into the booth, but didn't touch the coffee he'd ordered. You have 5 minutes. Talk. He sat down heavily, stared at his hands for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were red. I'm sorry. 2 words. Inadequate and far too late. Sorry for what, exactly? For stealing from me? For trying to throw me out of my own house? For telling me I'd die penniless? He flinched at each question. All of it.
I don't know what happened to me.
How I became this person. I do. You got greedy. You decided your comfort was more important than my dignity. You're right. His voice cracked. You're absolutely right. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry. That I see now what I did, and I'm going to have to live with it for the rest of my life. I studied him, looked for the trick, the angle, the manipulation. But all I saw was a broken man who'd finally hit bottom. What happened to Tara? She left. When she found out the money was gone, she was gone 3 days later. Filed for divorce. Turns out she was only in it for the lifestyle. He laughed bitterly. Guess I can't blame her. That's why I was with her too. You're losing the house. It wasn't a question. I'd heard through the town grapevine that he'd missed payments, that the bank was starting foreclosure proceedings. He nodded. Can't afford it. Can't afford anything really. I'm moving into an apartment next month. Something small. Cheap. Good. He looked up, surprised. You needed to lose everything, Evan. Because that's the only way you were going to understand what you put me through. What you took from me. I know. I know that now. He paused. The worst part is, I can't even hate you for it. You did what you had to do. What Dad would have wanted you to do. Calvin's name hung between us like a ghost. Your father loved you so much, I said quietly. We both did. We gave you everything we had. I know. And you threw it away for money. For things. For a life that wasn't even real. I know. His voice was barely a whisper now. Mom, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. That I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be better. To be the man you and Dad raised me to be. I looked at this man across from me. My son. The baby I'd nursed and raised and loved with every fiber of my being. The man who'd broken my heart more thoroughly than I thought possible. And I felt nothing. No anger. No love. No forgiveness. Just emptiness where a relationship used to be. I hope you do better, Evan. I really do. For your sake, not mine. Does that mean, can we?
No.
The word came out firm. Final. We can't go back.
We can't fix this.
You made choices, and choices have consequences. This is yours. I understand. Maybe someday, I said, standing up. Maybe years from now we can talk again.
But not now.
Now I need to heal. And you need to figure out who you really are without money or power or anyone to manipulate. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Evan. I walked out of that coffee shop and didn't look back. Didn't let myself wonder if I'd been too harsh or not harsh enough. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. And maybe that's okay. Maybe some relationships are meant to end so new ones can begin. That evening, I sat on my cottage porch and watched the orphanage kids play soccer in the golden light of sunset. One of them kicked the ball too hard, and it rolled over to my feet. A little boy ran up, breathless. Sorry, Miss Helena. No worries, sweetheart. I kicked the ball back to him, and he grinned before running off. Miss Helena. Like I was someone's favorite teacher or grandmother. Like I belonged here. And maybe I did. Maybe this was where I was supposed to end up all along. Not in a house filled with memories of betrayal, but in a cottage surrounded by children who needed love more than I needed revenge. My phone buzzed. A text from Lydia with a picture of her and her kids. Can't wait to visit next week, Mom. The kids are so excited to see you. I smiled and texted back a heart emoji. This was my family now. The real one. The one built on choice and love instead of obligation and blood. And that was enough. Could you ever forgive someone who hurt you this deeply? Or is some pain too great? Share your thoughts in the comments, because Helena's final chapter might surprise you. 6 months later, I'm standing in the same spot where the story began. On a porch, not my old one, but my new one, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. But everything else has changed. The cottage is filled with life now. Plants in the windows. Photos on the walls. Lydia's kids' drawings on the refrigerator. The sound of children laughing in the distance as they get ready for school. I volunteer at the orphanage 3 days a week. Help with homework. Teach the older kids how to balance a checkbook and spot financial manipulation. Things I learned the hard way. Mrs. Chin says I'm the most popular volunteer they've ever had. The kids call me Grandma Helena. I have a pension that covers my needs. Medical care. Friends who check on me because they want to, not because they're obligated. A daughter who calls twice a week and visits once a month. I have peace.
The town talks sometimes.
About what happened with Evan. Some people think I was too harsh. Others think I was too soft. But mostly people understand. In a small town like Maple Creek, everybody knows somebody who got taken advantage of by family. I heard through the grapevine that Evan's doing better. He got a job at a warehouse. Lives in a studio apartment. Goes to therapy twice a week. Whether he's actually changed or just learned to pretend better, I don't know. And honestly, I don't need to know. That's his journey now. Not mine. Tara moved away. Last I heard, she'd married someone else. Someone with money. I hope she's happy, or at least getting what she deserves. Those aren't always the same thing. The house, my old house, was foreclosed on and sold at auction. A young family bought it. They've painted it yellow and planted flowers in Calvin's garden. Sometimes I drive past just to see it, and I feel nothing. No pain. No longing. Just a quiet recognition that it was part of my past, not my future. The land Calvin left me, the $2 million worth of property, is now a playground, a library, and 3 new dormitories for the orphanage. They named the playground after him, the Calvin Maris Memorial Play Area. There's a plaque with his picture and a quote I chose. The real wealth is in who you can trust with it. The kids don't know the story behind those words. They just know Mr. Maris must have been a good man because his wife gave away a fortune to help them. And Calvin was a good man. The best I ever knew. Sometimes I talk to him still. At night, when the cottage is quiet and the stars are bright. I tell him about the kids. About Lydia. About how I took his advice about quiet justice and turned my pain into something that helps others. I like to think he's proud of me. That somewhere, somehow, he knows I didn't let the bastards win. Last week, one of the older girls at the orphanage, a teenager named Maya who's aging out of the system soon, asked me about my life. How I ended up here. I told her the truth. Not all of it, but enough. So your own son stole from you? She asked, eyes wide with disbelief. He did. And you just let him lose everything? I didn't let him do anything. He made his choices. I just made sure his choices had consequences. She thought about that for a while. Then, were you scared? When you fought back? Terrified, I admitted. But I was more scared of what would happen if I didn't fight back. Of dying in some nursing home, alone and forgotten, while he spent my money on things that don't matter. That's so badass, she said. Then quickly, sorry. I mean, that's really brave. I laughed. Badass works too. She smiled. And I saw something shift in her eyes. Understanding, maybe. Or hope. The realization that you don't have to accept cruelty just because it comes from someone who's supposed to love you. That's what this story is really about. Not revenge. Not even justice, exactly. It's about knowing your worth. About refusing to be diminished. About understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is to say no, to set boundaries, to protect your peace even when it costs you everything. They say time heals all wounds, but I don't think that's true. Time doesn't heal. It reveals. It shows you who people really are when they think you're powerless. It teaches you that blood doesn't make family, love and respect do. And it proves that karma never loses an address. She just takes the scenic route sometimes. When Karma came to Maple Creek, she came quietly. Just like me. Just like Calvin always taught me. But quiet doesn't mean weak. It never did. As I watch the sunrise, I think about everyone who's been betrayed by someone they trusted. Everyone who's been told they're nothing, that they deserve nothing, that they should just accept their fate and be grateful for crumbs. I want them to know, you're stronger than you think, smarter than they believe, and you have more options than fear lets you see. Never let love blind you to cruelty. Family should protect your peace, not profit from your pain. And justice, real justice, doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. And when it does, it echoes forever. My phone rings. It's Lydia, calling to tell me she's pregnant again. A little boy this time. Mom, we want to name him Calvin. If that's okay with you. I close my eyes and feel tears slip down my cheeks. Good tears. Healing tears. Your father would be honored, I say. And so am I. After we hang up, I sit on my porch and watch the orphanage wake up. Kids stumbling out for breakfast. Staff members starting their day. A whole community built on second chances and quiet love. This is my legacy. Not money. Not property. Not even the house Calvin and I built together. This piece. This purpose. This proof that you can lose everything and still end up exactly where you belong. And that's worth more than any inheritance Evan could have stolen. The sun climbs higher. The day begins. And I'm still here, still standing, still at peace. Still Helena Maris. 72 years old, and finally free. Thank you for staying with Helena's story until the very end. If this moved you, if it made you think about justice and family and the power of quiet strength, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We share stories like this every week, Stories of resilience, revenge, redemption, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. Drop a comment about what Helena's journey meant to you. Your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear it. Share this video with someone who needs to know they're stronger than they think. And remember, karma never loses an address. She's just taking the scenic route. Until next time, stay strong, stay wise, and never let anyone steal your peace.